When one of Hollywood's most cherished actors takes a seat for what is supposed to be a standard interview, only to find himself confronted by a host intent on dismantling his image on live television, the atmosphere can shift instantly. From the moment Johnny Depp entered the set of The View, tension crackled in the air, and what followed left viewers in shock while social media buzzed with reactions. That morning began like any other, with the co-hosts settling into their seats as cameras rolled. Joy Behar, wearing her trademark smirk, shuffled through her notes with an unmistakable intensity, clearly anticipating this confrontation. She had been waiting for the chance to corner Depp during a segment intended to promote his latest film. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the incredibly talented Johnny Depp," Whoopi Goldberg announced, as the audience erupted into applause. Depp strolled onto the stage with his characteristic swagger, dressed in his usual eclectic attire, a faint smile tugging at his lips as he waved to the cheering crowd. "Johnny, welcome to The View," Whoopi greeted warmly as he took his seat. "We're thrilled to have you with us today." "Thank you for having me," Depp replied softly, his voice unmistakably gentle. "It's always a pleasure to be here with you all." However, Joy Behar leaned forward immediately, her gaze sharp with barely hidden hostility. "Johnny, before we dive into your new project, our viewers deserve to know the real Johnny Depp, don't you think?" The other co-hosts exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Sunny host looked tense while Sarah Haynes fiddled nervously with her cards. Even Whoopi appeared momentarily taken aback by the directness of Joy's opening salvo. "I'm not sure what you mean by that, Joy," Depp responded with calm restraint, though his jaw tightened ever so slightly. "I'm here to talk about my work." A harsh laugh escaped Joy. "Oh, come on, Johnny. Your work? Let's be honest about what your recent work has really been. Making headlines for all the wrong reasons, mistreating people, and frankly, I believe our audience deserves more than the polished image you're trying to present." The studio grew silent, the soft hum of cameras the only sound. Depp's demeanor changed subtly, his casual posture becoming more guarded. "Joy, I came here in good faith to discuss my film. If your intention is to delve into my personal life, perhaps that's better suited for off-camera," he said measuredly. "No, this is exactly where it should be discussed," Joy insisted, waving dismissively. "You've spent years hiding behind your characters, but what about the real Johnny Depp? The one responsible for so much controversy and pain?" Whoopi tried to intervene. "Joy, maybe we should." "No, Whoopi," Joy cut her off sharply. "I've witnessed this man celebrated while real victims remain unheard. Someone has to hold him accountable, and if that someone must be me, then so be it." Depp's eyes flickered with an intensity that suggested danger. "Victims? What victims are you referencing, Joy? You might want to be cautious with accusations made on live television." "I'll exercise the caution I deem necessary," Joy shot back. "I won't be silenced by lawyers, publicists, or fans. The truth must come out, and I intend to ensure it does." The tension became nearly tangible. Camera operators edged closer, sensing an explosive moment was imminent. The co-hosts looked frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let the confrontation unfold. Depp's voice dropped to a low, controlled tone that carried a subtle threat. "I've conducted myself respectfully since stepping onto this stage. I came here as a guest, and you are treating me as though I am on trial. What exactly is your grievance with me?" Joy reclined with an expression of satisfaction. "My grievance, Johnny, is that you embody much of what's wrong with Hollywood. The arrogance, the sense of entitlement, the belief that one can act without facing consequences." "And what kind of man do you think I am?" Depp asked, eyebrows raised. "A man who destroys everything he touches." "Exactly," Joy replied without hesitation. "A man who leaves a path of broken lives in his wake, yet expects the world to sympathize when the chaos collapses." The audience sat silent, some visibly uncomfortable as the interview veered sharply from promotional discussion to personal accusation. Joy pulled a thick folder of papers from her side. "I've done my research, Johnny. I know about the lawsuits, the allegations, the recurring patterns of behavior you've avoided accountability for. I'm exhausted from watching you receive standing ovations while real victims remain unheard." Depp's usual composure began to fray, his hands, once expressive and graceful, clenched into fists on the chair arms. "Joy, these are serious claims. I hope you can substantiate them." "I have evidence," she said with a smirk. "The question is, are you prepared to confront it?" Depp leaned back, a cold smile appearing across his face. "I believe I am. But before you start reading from your collection of clippings, tell me, what gives you the authority to judge me?" Joy's eyes glimmered with satisfaction. "The right. I claim it as a journalist, as a woman, and as someone who values justice, unlike others in this industry who turn a blind eye." Depp responded with a bitter laugh, the tension in the room so thick it could be cut with a knife. "Is that what you call this?" Depp's voice cut through the tension in the studio, calm but dripping with disdain. "Because from where I'm sitting, This seems less like an interview and more like a public execution. Whoopi finally spoke, trying to restore order. Okay, everyone. Let's take a breath here, no? Depp said firmly, his gaze fixed unwaveringly on Joy Behar. Let her continue. I want to hear what this so-called journalist has to present. Please, Joy, illuminate us with your evidence. Joy opened her folder with exaggerated flair. Well, since you asked so politely, let's begin with your pattern of erratic behavior on film sets. The tardiness, substance abuse, verbal mistreatment of crew members. Shall I continue? By all means, Depp replied, his voice laced with sarcasm. But while you're reading from your little gossip collection, perhaps you should acknowledge the hundreds of crew members who would contradict you. The ones who've worked with me repeatedly. Who consider me both friend and colleague. Oh, you mean the ones too intimidated to speak out because of your influence? Joy snapped back. Or maybe the ones who are paid to keep quiet. Depp's playful sarcasm evaporated, replaced by a more intense gravity. Joy, you've crossed a line. Accusing me of intimidation and bribery isn't just unprofessional, it's potentially libelous. Truth is a defense against libel, Johnny, she countered smugly. And the truth is you've evaded accountability for decades because people are either too fearful or too starstruck to confront you. The truth. Depp leaned forward, eyes blazing. You want to discuss truth? You don't know me. You don't understand my story. You're sitting there with a folder full of speculation and gossip, masquerading as moral authority. In reality, you're just a bitter talk show host deriving pleasure from tearing down someone you fail to comprehend. The studio was deathly silent. Even camera operators froze, not wanting to miss a single moment of the confrontation. Joy's face turned red with fury. Bitter. I'm not the one who spent years entangled in lawsuits and losing roles because of my own conduct, Depp said, standing abruptly, towering over the panel. Joy, you want to discuss actions? Let's examine yours. You invited me under false pretenses. You ambushed me on live television. You make accusations without evidence. And you do it all with a smile, savoring every second. Sit down, Johnny. Joy commanded, though her voice faltered slightly. No, I won't, Depp replied, his voice rising for the first time. I've stayed quiet as you've attacked my character, integrity, and livelihood. But I draw the line at your insinuations that I've intimidated or bribed people. That's not merely incorrect, it's reprehensible. Sarah Haynes attempted to intervene. Perhaps we should focus on your upcoming film. There is no discussion about a new film. Depp interrupted, eyes locked on Joy. This was never about promoting anything. This is about Joy Behar trying to score points by attacking someone she sees as an easy target. Joy rose as well, matching his intensity. Easy target. You think you're the victim here. What about the real victims whose voices have been silenced by people like you? People like me. Depp's voice trembled with anger. What exactly do you mean by that, Joy? Because I suspect this isn't really about my alleged behavior. It's about something entirely different. Don't twist this around, she snarled. This is about accountability, about powerful men believing they can act without consequences. Accountability, Depp laughed harshly. From you, the woman who has spent years excusing politicians and celebrities when it suited your agenda. The same woman who attacked victims when they didn't fit your narrative. You lecture me on accountability? Joy's face paled. How dare you? No. How dare you? Depp thundered, voice echoing across the studio. How dare you sit in your privileged position and attack someone based on gossip and conjecture? How dare you claim to speak for victims while conducting yourself as a bully? Whoopi frantically signaled producers offstage, but the cameras continued rolling, capturing every explosive moment. You're out of line, Johnny. Joy tried to assert, though her voice shook. I'm out of line? Depp's laughter was cold, bitter, cutting through the tension like steel. Joy, you haven't seen out of line yet. Joy's hand clutched the folder, shaking slightly, as Depp's intensity filled the room. Every accusation she had prepared seemed to falter under the weight of his response. The carefully controlled environment of the show had erupted into a battle of wills, each word exchanged escalating the conflict. The audience, silent and captivated, held its breath as the confrontation spiraled further, leaving a palpable tension that seemed impossible to dissipate. Depp's presence dominated the stage now, his every movement calculated to convey authority and indignation. Joy, equally determined, refused to yield. The two locked in a verbal duel that blurred the line between personal attack and professional scrutiny. The cameras captured it all, each close-up revealing the subtle shifts in expression, the tight grip on the folder, the narrowing of eyes, the flush of anger, the measured pauses before cutting retorts. What had begun as a promotional interview had transformed into a charged confrontation, an intense collision of personalities, convictions, and accusations. Every word, every gesture, resonated with the audience, leaving them to witness a spectacle far beyond the expected casual conversation. The tension in the room, the clash of egos, and the exposure of raw emotion had turned a routine broadcast into a moment that would be remembered, dissected, and debated long after the cameras stopped rolling. Depp's stance, firm and unyielding, challenged the assumptions and narratives presented by Joy, forcing a confrontation that neither host nor guest could fully control. In this charged atmosphere, the audience saw a stark contrast between accusation and defense, performance and authenticity, power and accountability, making every second a testament to the volatility of live television and the complexity of human conflict. "You want to play this game? Fine, let's play," Depp said, his tone sharp and unwavering. "Let's examine your record. Let's discuss every instance you've been wrong, every person you've unfairly attacked, every piece of damage your reckless accusations have caused. This isn't about me," Joy protested weakly, trying to regain footing. "Oh, but it is," Depp shot back, stepping closer to the panel, "because you turned this into a session of character assassination, rather than a discussion of facts. You made it personal instead of professional, and now you must face the consequences of that choice." The tension in the studio was palpable. Security personnel lingered near the exits, and producers held urgent discussions just out of frame, yet Depp was far from finished. He inhaled deeply, his voice dropping into an eerie calm, the intensity in his eyes undimmed. "Joy, I came here expecting a civilized conversation with professionals. Instead, I found someone consumed by self-righteousness, so blinded by her own sense of justice that she's forgotten what journalism is supposed to look like." The Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Depp raised a hand to silence her. "No, you've had your turn. You've had your moment to strut and deliver accusations. Now it's my turn, and this time, you're going to listen." The other hosts remained frozen, unsure whether to intervene or allow this unprecedented confrontation to continue. Whoopi seemed ready to disappear under her desk while Sarah and Sunny exchanged anxious glances. "You want to talk about patterns, Joy?" Depp pressed, his voice strengthening. "Let's examine your pattern. How often have you used this chair to ruin reputations based on rumors, half-truths, or outright innuendo? How many lives have you disrupted with your compulsion to act as America's moral judge?" "That's not what I do," Joy protested, though her words lacked conviction. "Isn't it?" Depp's smile was sharp, cutting. "Let me refresh your memory. Remember when you spent weeks attacking that young actress who shared her story, only to quietly apologize months later when the truth surfaced? Remember when you undermined a director's career over a single anonymous source that turned out to be false?" Joy's face drained of color. "Those were different situations." "Were they?" Depp interrupted. "Or were they just examples of you choosing who deserves your defense and who merits your wrath based on your personal biases? From where I stand, it seems you select your victims as carefully as you select your heroes." The audience sat rapt, some leaning forward, others covering their mouths in shock. Cameras captured every reaction, every subtle expression, turning this volatile exchange into an unforgettable spectacle. "You speak of accountability, Joy," Depp continued, intensity rising, "but when were you last held accountable for the consequences of your own actions? When did you face the damage you've caused?" "I'm not the one on trial here," Joy said, desperation creeping into her voice. "No, you're not," Depp agreed, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more authority than any shout. "But maybe you should be. Maybe someone should scrutinize your record with the same relentless intensity you apply to others." He began pacing slowly in front of the panel, like a lawyer delivering a final argument. "Week after week, you hide behind this desk, shielded by your position and platform, and you destroy lives. You ruin careers, disrupt families, and spread venom disguised as moral outrage." "That's not true," Joy whispered, her protest weak even to her own ears. "Isn't it?" Depp halted, locking eyes with her. "Then explain why you chose today to ambush me. Why a promotional interview seemed the perfect moment to attempt to ruin my reputation. Did you think I wouldn't defend myself? Did you think I'd sit quietly like all your other targets?" Joy straightened, attempting authority, but her hands trembled visibly. "I was doing my job," she said, her voice faltering. "Your job?" Depp's laugh was bitter and harsh. "Your job is to inform and engage, not prosecute and condemn. Your responsibility is to ask questions, not deliver judgments. But somewhere along the way you forgot that. You began to believe your own press. You convinced yourself you were a crusader instead of just another talk show host." The studio had fallen utterly silent. Even the crew froze, fearful of missing a single word of the extraordinary confrontation. "Let me tell you about real victims, Joy," Depp continued, his voice now carrying a raw, unmistakable emotion, resonating across the room. "The people who face real consequences, not gossip columns and ratings-driven narratives. Those who endure while others, like you, play judge from a pedestal of privilege. You think your position shields you, that your platform gives you immunity from scrutiny. But it doesn't. It shouldn't, and today it hasn't. Every word Depp spoke seemed to ripple through the audience, the co-hosts, and the studio itself. The confrontation had transformed from an interview into a powerful reckoning, a public examination of morality, responsibility, and the lines between truth and performance. The cameras continued to roll, capturing each piercing glance, every tremor of anger, every subtle victory and defeat in this battle of wills. The atmosphere crackled with tension, with every observer acutely aware that what had begun as a routine segment had evolved into a rare spectacle, a confrontation that exposed raw human emotion, challenged perceptions of power, and displayed the volatility that live television can so dramatically unveil. Depp's composure, his deliberate pacing, and his unflinching gaze established control of the narrative in the room, turning what should have been a simple discussion of his work into a stark exploration of accountability, ethics, and the human consequences of public judgment. Joy sat rigid, folder in hand, the weight of Depp's words pressing down, her earlier confidence wavering. The audience remained captivated, unable to look away, each person acutely aware that this moment had escalated beyond ordinary television drama into something both shocking and unforgettable. "Real victims don't need someone speaking for them," Depp said, his voice steady but filled with intensity. "Real victims need justice, they need support, they need time and space to heal. They don't need a talk show host weaponizing their pain to settle personal scores. I've always supported victims." Joy tried to argue, but her voice was barely audible. "Have you?" Depp countered sharply. "Or have you only supported those whose stories fit your narrative? I can think of countless victims whose voices you ignored because their experiences didn't serve your agenda. I can think of just as many people you've attacked who turned out to be victims themselves." Joy shrank slightly in her chair, the fight draining from her as Depp's words landed with precision. "You want to know what I think, Joy?" Depp continued, leaning against the edge of the panel, his tone deliberate. "I think you've become addicted to the rush of moral superiority to the point where you've lost sight of what real justice looks like. I think you've mistaken destroying people for protecting them, and I think you've done it so many times that you no longer see the devastation you've caused." Whoopi tried to intervene. "Johnny, maybe we should." "No, Whoopi," Depp said firmly but respectfully. "I'm almost done. Joy needs to hear this, and your audience needs to hear it as well." He turned back to Joy, who now stared at her hands, pale and trembling. "You came after me today expecting an easy target. You thought you could intimidate me, damage my reputation, and walk away feeling like you'd delivered justice. But you made a critical error, Joy. You assumed I was guilty of every accusation you hurled. You didn't investigate, you didn't verify, you didn't even extend the courtesy of a fair question. You simply attacked because that's what you do, that's who you've become." Tears welled in Joy's eyes. "I was trying to do the right thing," she whispered. "Were you?" Depp's voice softened, almost pitying. "Or were you trying to boost ratings, create a viral moment, prove how fearless and righteous you are by tearing down a celebrity? That's what this has become, a performance, not journalism." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but no sound emerged. "The tragedy, Joy," Depp continued, voice calm yet firm, "is that you could have been a true journalist today. You could have asked thoughtful questions about my career, my craft, my projects. You could have held a meaningful conversation that informed your audience. Instead, you chose to stage a public execution fueled by gossip and conjecture." He straightened, adjusting his jacket with the same effortless poise he'd worn when first walking on stage. "Here's the thing about trying to destroy someone without cause, Joy. Sometimes they fight back. Sometimes they refuse to be your victim. And sometimes, they reveal you for what you really are." The studio was silent, the hum of the air conditioning loud against the stillness. Joy sat frozen, smaller and more defeated than anyone had ever seen her appear on television. "I came here in good faith," Depp said, now addressing the audience as much as his accuser. "I came to discuss art, storytelling, and the craft I love. Instead, I found myself defending my very existence against someone who had already decided I was guilty of everything imaginable." He stepped back toward his chair but did not sit. "This is what happens when fairness is abandoned for ratings. When sensationalism is chosen over responsible journalism. When destroying people is valued more than understanding them." Looking directly into the camera, Depp's expression grew dignified, earnest. "To anyone watching who has ever been the target of baseless accusations, who has been judged without evidence or denied a fair hearing, know this: you do not have to accept it. You do not have to sit quietly while someone dismantles your reputation for their own gain." He turned one final time toward Joy, now openly crying, her posture slumped. "And Joy, I hope you someday feel what it is to be on the receiving end of your own tactics. I hope you find your way back to actual journalism, instead of whatever this performance was meant to be." With that, Johnny Depp walked off the stage, leaving behind a stunned audience, a shaken host, and a moment of television that would linger in conversation for years. The cameras kept rolling as Joy Behar remained in her chair, the weight of her own actions settling over her while the other co-hosts scrambled to consider how to continue the show. The silence, heavy and reverberating, marked the end of a confrontation that had shifted from a routine interview to a profound reckoning about accountability, power, and the responsibility of those who wield influence. Depp's words had carved a space for reflection, exposing the tension between personal vendettas and true justice, leaving the audience and the hosts alike to grapple with the implications of what had just transpired. The moment crystallized the impact of live television at its most intense, a collision of ego, principle, and morality, where one man's defense of his integrity became a lesson about the consequences of public accusation, the fragility of reputation, and the need for fairness in the face of scrutiny. In those minutes, the balance of power on stage shifted, revealing the human cost of careless judgment and the courage required to confront it directly.